But we have a problem. We have infectious agents around us, viruses and bacteria and fungi and other things that would do us harm. And we have to be able to protect ourselves against all of them. Well, if you do the mathematics, it looks like there's maybe at least millions. And yet we've only got 22,000 genes. So how do we protect ourselves against millions of potential invaders when we've only got 22,000 genes? And then the story gets worse because there's only a handful of genes associated with immunity. 8 or so, depending on how you look at it. And so with just a combination of 8 or 10 genes, you can produce virtually limitless repertoire of antibodies already pre-made within us that can recognize anything that you might ever encounter anytime in your life. And they're already there. I know that's a little bit farther than we can go today. But they're already there. Have you heard of someone receiving a bone marrow transplant? They get cancer, for example, and they have to have this chemo that just completely knocks out their bone marrow, and their only hope is to get a bone marrow transplant. The reason that that will work is because of this. Because we can regenerate the entire immune system in just a matter of a few weeks if the bone marrow graft will take. Because even though you might implant only a few thousand bone marrow cells, they will randomly mutate in those B cells and T cells, and we will generate all the specificities again just within a matter of a couple months. Randomness plays a role in life. And then we can't talk about randomness without talking about evolution. For a long time, the only evidence for evolution was in the fossil record. But you know what happens? The best way to verify information is independent verification. And that's what's happening now. And it's happening so fast. The Genome Project. The Human Genome Project came out in 2003. For the first time in the history of all history, we now have a letter-by-letter code of all 3.1 billion bases that make us up. The code of who we are. And what we can do is we can take that genetic code and do the same thing for the chimpanzee, and for the cat, and the dog, and the horse, and the mouse. And we can lay them right up next to each other, and we can see exactly where the changes have occurred. And there are very well-known genetic mechanisms that explain that. And so for the first time, we see connectedness between species that we've never seen before. Here's just one example. This is human evolution. Did you know that, this is funny, I had students give a seminar a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about human chromosomes and cell division, and he said that humans had 48 chromosomes. Well, apes have 48 chromosomes. Humans have 46.
We used to have 48.
Well, that's maybe. Okay, so here we go.
It's in the books.
So here we go. Here is the chromosomes for different species: human, chimp, gorilla, and orangutan. Chromosome number 5, chromosome number 6. Now you see some things here with the banding patterns immediately. There's a lot of correspondence. Not necessarily perfect correspondence, a lot of correspondence between them, which suggests similarity and connectedness. And then the same thing over here for this one. But the real kicker for this slide is this last one, where in apes, the chimp, gorilla, and orangutan, there are 2 sets of chromosomes here, which you can see very clearly match up to the human counterpart, chromosome number 2. There. It is very clear that human chromosome number 2 is a genetic fusion product of 2 ape chromosomes. Now, if you've taken, remember any from your basic biology, chromosomes have to have centromeres. Those points where the chromosomal spindles can reach out, grab them, and pull them to the opposite sides of the pole when the cell is dividing. Okay, they attach to these centromeres. The DNA sequences in these regions, here's a centromere of this chromosome, here's the centromere of this chromosome, and you notice in chromosome number 2 here, this centromere is not showing. Couldn't have 2 centromeres. If it did, the cells would be non-viable. So you'd say, well, what's going on here? Well, you can see that this centromere exactly corresponds to this one. But something deeper goes on here. When you look here, you don't see the actual centromere region and attachment site. But now, with the genetic manipulation tools that we have, we can go in and check the nucleotide sequence there. And what we see is there is a remnant of nucleotide bases that are characteristic of centromeric regions. So that tells you that that region right there is a fossilized centromere region. It used to be a centromere, but it's not any longer. So these types of things are things that we have to put into the equation if we're going to speak honestly with integrity, both to believers and to non-believers. We can't pretend that these things don't exist anymore. They do. And there's a whole lot more. So understanding randomness. The typical definition of randomness goes something like this. It's haphazard, coincidence, it was just chance, purposeless. But this is sort of the common culture definition. But you know what? If you look in the dictionary, you will find, or in a math book, you will find a second definition of randomness. And that second definition is equal opportunity of occurrence. And if you're doing the math, it says equal opportunity of occurrence within a set. You've got to get with the set there. Okay? The reason this is important, then, well, so then I say biology, then, should really be more accurately defined and viewed as an equal opportunity process. Lots of precursors made, lots of sperm cells, and each of them have an equal opportunity to fertilize that egg. Lots of fish eggs produced, each of them have an equal opportunity to survive. The reason this is important, and this is the whole pivotal issue of the entire talk, because if anyone, if we buy into this first definition, which is really an atheistic definition, this is what Dawkins will say, evolution, ironically, this is what the creationists say too, that evolution and randomness are inconsistent with purpose and God. But if we buy into that definition, we have a real problem. Because if random is defined as purposeless, then connecting this thought to a purposeful God is impossible. Definitions. So which one do we want to use? We get to choose. But if we use the one that Dawkins says and that our six-day creationists agree with, this is where we end up, logically. All right, so that raises another question. You know, we're talking about random as if we know now exactly what it is, and I'm not sure that we do. So let's probe a little bit deeper, like Landon, you know, the cryptogram. You look a little bit deeper, a little longer. Let's see if there's something else here for us to discover. So I'll ask you, is anything truly random? My brother works for a computer software company. He's in senior management now. He does a lot of the defense contracts that they have. And they say in their software writing that they have to put these cryptic programs in there that are based upon random numbers. But their problem is they can't find any real random numbers. Because if you think about it, you've heard of people creating computer algorithms to create random number generators. Okay, you do that. But think about that. How could that be truly random? Because a person defined what the algorithm would be, which would determine what the output would be. So the people that are in this field, and they know a lot more about this than I do, they actually seem to prefer the word pseudo-random, close to random, apparently random. So is anything truly random? If you look at this sequence of numbers, does it look random to you? If you take maybe a fifth grader, and you show that to them, they say, yeah, it looks random. But if you look at, probably because they're not interested enough to look at it, but if you take maybe a ninth grader or a 10th grader who's had a little bit more math background, had the opportunity to explore number theory and things, you look at this and you say, well, wait a minute, that's not completely random. Look, there's some doublets of 4s there. That's order, isn't it? 1s, 2s, and 1s. You know, and if you look a little bit closer, they're actually in groups of 4. Did you notice that before I did it? Probably not. But if you look a little closer, would you discern that? Well, here's another one. Now, you know I'm going to play with you a little bit, so. So is this one random? What do you think? Some of you are going to recognize it. What is it? Fibonacci sequence. Right.
Yeah, right. Fibonacci sounds like an Italian sneaker to me.
That's because there's more to a Fibonacci number than meets the casual eye. Once again, C.S. Lewis in the Chronicles of Narnia, in The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, he's talking to Aslan the lion is talking to the children, and he's describing, his death is not necessarily being the end. He describes something called a deeper magic. Is there something else there? So we look at this,